Hey, everybody. This is Nate Therian. Welcome to my pop up podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful Venture Cafe deck today, and I'm sitting with Anushka Singh of Kathalyst. Anushka, if you want to make your introduction, introduce yourself, introduce the company, you're on.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Anushka. I'm the founder of Kathalyst. At Kathalyst, we're helping companies modernize legacy software. So, a lot of Fortune 500 companies have software running from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, mainly called mainframes. And we help them take that old software, convert it to 21st century software, and run it on cloud technology from today's age.
So, it sounds like, you say that, all I can think of is that scene from Captain America where they're in the bunker and they got the bad guy, Zolar, or whatever his name is running on tape. That's all I can think of when you said that right there. That's all that popped in my head.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. If you would, just describe a little bit about the problem you're trying to solve. I know it's legacy software, and a bunch of companies are running their Captain America bunker underground thing going on their systems, which may simplify it a whole lot, probably is. But if you could just for the audience, define the problem you're trying to solve with Kathalyst.
Yes, absolutely. So basically, when software was hitting the business world, one of the most popular languages from that era was a language called COBOL, and it came out in like late 60s, 70s, 80s. It had a huge adoption. A lot of the critical software that was built back then. So you have to imagine, like, what were the first software systems built ever? So the banks were building their accounting, like transaction software. The credit card companies were building that transaction software. All the ACH transactions were built on that. The governments were building their databases on these old softwares, right? Like
The government's still using that.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. They are still using it. There's a whole lot of cautionary tape around, like, people should not be using it, but it's so hard to move out of these systems because, you cannot have any downtime. You cannot have any risk involved. You cannot have, you can't shut down a bank transaction system for like 8 hours a day. That's going to ruin the bank. So that's where you need like better software, you need a better system to move those old legacy applications to cloud. You have to run it in parallel. You have to, keep the old system alive while you're building the new system, and manage that network and transactions and things like that, which is not an easy task to do. And with the level of COBOL that is out there, like recent estimates say that there are around 800 billion lines of COBOL still running. And the critical problem is there are only 2 million COBOL developers left in the world. And that number is like decreasing by 10% every year. All these COBOL developers are of an older age, closer to retirement age. And that's the biggest like pinpoint, because if you still had people who knew the technology, you could maintain the technology that was built. It's a very strong, it's the technology has held up all these years, right? There's nothing wrong essentially with that. The problem is you don't have the human beings anymore. You can't, like, the new age developers, people who are coming out of college are not learning COBOL. And none of them want to learn COBOL. Nobody wants to go into legacy software, and because there's no career trajectory there. So it's that's creating a more of a problem for these companies, where they have the system, but they know they're going to, if they have people for it today, they know they won't have people for it in 5 years, in 10 years. So they need to start thinking long term about, like, okay, what do we do? How are we going to move? Either, are we going to move? Are we going to train? I have seen a few companies where they'll take entry level, students from arts and humanities, and they'll train them on COBOL. Like, those people will learn the language, they'll learn everything, and it's like a 6-month incubation, but then they stay in the company for like 6 years. So they gain that experience, and that's how, like, that one company that I know is like making sure that they have the expertise to maintain their old systems.
Oh, that's funny. So they're just like pulling the interns out of whatever room they're in. It's like, yeah, come on, kid, you're gonna learn some COBOL now.
Yeah, almost. Almost.
Oh my god, that's great.
Yeah.
So the problem you're trying to solve is something that clearly there's a market for. You got all these, the federal government. That's it seems like a huge task. It seems like there's a huge market there. What drove you to start the company? I mean, how did you find this problem to begin with and drove it to a point where you're like, all right, there's a problem here that I can solve as a startup. I'm going to go do this thing. What was your why?
Yeah. So the way I landed onto this was I was one of those interns that was working at a big company and was put onto the project.
No way.
Yep. Yep.
Man.
At the age of like 22, 23, I was learning COBOL and I was learning mainframes and writing everything in Java and yeah, that was an experience. Good and bad. But that's how I knew the problem, and then I just the aha moment happened when ChatGPT hit, and me and my friends, we were just fiddling around with it like everybody was, in like December 2022 and January 2023. We were doing all of the normal things. We made it, crack jokes, made it write a poem, we made it do maths. It struggled at it at the time. But then one of the things that we did was we put in some code into it and we asked it to just explain it to us. And we got a fairly good response. And for me, what that did was it bridged the gap for the most critical problem that I faced when I was working, which was understanding the system that I was working on. Because when I was an intern, the biggest challenge was like just trying to be like, what is this old code? Well, what is this old code doing from a business context? Like from a larger system context? Because you can look at other lines of code and be like, yeah, this is an if statement, this is doing addition, this is doing multiplication and things like that. But you don't know where that fits into the larger context, right? You don't know what implications it's going to have. What's going to go wrong if you mess up this calculation. So that's where I saw an opportunity to start, and that's actually where we started. We started with only like code documentation. We were like, we'll just help developers understand the applications that they're working on, because in the work environment, you are rarely building things from scratch. It's only like in the startup world where you might be building things from scratch. When you're working for a big company, very often you're working on projects that someone else has already worked on. Or when you build something, you have to integrate with something else that's already been developed. And that's like a huge task, because you need to understand, you can't disturb what's already been done, but also you have to add on to what you have. So that's where we started. We were like, code documentation will help these people kind of understand the system and go from there. And then, as a startup does, we pivoted, find, where will people pay to solve the problem? Where are people, just looking for a free service? That kind of a trajectory.
Where's the cash?
Yes.
Where's the cash?
Yes. Where's that burning pain? Where are the companies going to take a second meeting or third meeting, which is important.
That's cool. Yeah. Where'd you get the pain point? I was one of those interns that got hauled into a room and started.
Yep.
Oh, that is too good. So the company itself, I believe about a year and a half. You're about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into the company.
Yes. If you look at like code documentation and everything, like if you really look at when we actually started, we started as a college project. Like while I was in my master's at Tufts University. So that was like February 2023. So that way, yes, 2 years. But if you look at like when we went seriously and when we went from like college project to company, that was a year and a half. And then when we focused in on legacy, that was like May of last year. So that very recent.
Very recent. Yes. So it's less than 2 years in.
Yeah.
And you've had your pivot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if the company has had their pivot, tell us a bit, because that's always something that's like, with all startups, it tends to be, we got this great idea. Okay, and then maybe it wasn't so great.
Yeah.
Or we got this great idea, but no one's going to pay us a thing for it. Yep. Or something. It's something that necessitates a pivot between the time that you defined your problem and okay, we actually started a company, and then you got to the point where it's like, all right, this isn't working out. We got to do something else.
Yeah.
What was the point at which you understood that this wasn't working out and you have to do something else?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Yeah. 2 months of trying to get conversations and trying to get people to pay you and nobody paying you by the end of it was a clear indication that, there was probably not going to work out.
That's a good one. That's a good place to start. We'll go on broke. Oh boy, the ship be sinking. We're gonna have to do something.
Yes. No money is a great indication that you should probably pivot. But the challenges we were having when we were doing just code documentation was like the developers loved it because no developer wants to write documentation. Nobody does it.
Just
well.
to kind of clarify, so at the beginning, before the pivot,
yes,
the focus of the company was the documentation.
Yes,
and then all right, after 6-8 months of no one's paying for this. Then came the dawning where it's like we got to find something where we're gonna get some money. Okay. So it was document. Go ahead, please.
Yes. So basically, there's so much code out there. You can do documentation for anything. I always had that tinkling that we should focus on legacy code. But at the time, we also had team members and everybody's consensus was we need to look into the future and therefore, do documentation with things that are going on today and tomorrow and things like that. But the problem that we found there, everybody wanted the product. Nobody wanted to pay for the product. And that was even true somewhat even on the enterprise level. It wasn't providing enough of a ROI for these companies to be able to put down even a 10K contract in place. So that's where I, in April, May of last year, I was basically like, okay, let's focus on legacy and let's see if the market is better there. And, if that is a need, because one of the things I know with documentation, because when I left my job, I had to do documentation, right? I had to write down everything that I worked on and hand it off to someone else. And it wasn't great. But I wrote something down and sent it to them. And I in the footnotes, I left my phone number there, my WhatsApp number. And some of them were messaging me 6 months out, do you know where this file is? Do you know why this decision was made? Was this decision made? What happened here? So what that indicated for me was that immediately once a project is over, you don't need documentation because everyone knows it in the back of their in their heads. The problem comes in 4 years, 5 years, or even sometimes 6 months out of it. This person has left, or you just forgotten what you worked on 5 years ago. I don't remember what I worked on 5 years ago, and you're coming back to it and you're trying to figure out why did you do something that you did at the time. So that's where that key of documentation comes in. And then you extend that to 20, 30 years and you can see the magnitude of the problem escalates. So that's how we kind of pivoted to that market. And then with documentation alone, and then we found better strategies to do the modernization. And then we're building a full end-to-end service product for the modernization included.
So the modernization, so post-pivot now it's Kathayst as we know it.
Yes.
Okay. And that has been going on. You've been doing that Kathayst as we know it for about 9 months now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So about 2 years in, 18 months, 2 years in, you've started. You've recognized the problem. You've had your pivot, and now is the product built out at this point, or is it kind of like a stealthy thing, or is it a work in progress, or is it ready for prime time? Where is it at?
So there are elements of it that are ready for production, and there are companies we have pilots going to use it in production. And then there are elements of it that are work in progress. So when I talk about Kathayst, the entire modernization product, end to end, that is a work in progress. But because we started with documentation and that as the core feature, we have pilots for that. And, we are working with companies to build that. So that element has already been built and is used by companies. But the actual, beyond documentation, what you need to do is you need to take the old code, you need to convert it to a newer language. So in our case, we're converting COBOL to Java. And then once you convert it, you also need to create a testing environment to make sure that the Java code you've created is the right Java code. You can't, it's actually doing the exact same things as the COBOL. And in any scenario that you might have with the legacy system, the modern system will act in the same way. So you have to make sure those things are there. So you need to create a robust testing environment, testing framework over there. Then from there, you have to go and actually, like, once you give the code back to, let's say you're working with a bank, you give the code back to the bank. You need people at the bank who will maintain the new application for the next 20, 30 years, right? So you need to assist them a little bit in that as well. So there's over there another element of like documentation comes in, like, giving them tools and like accessories where they can onboard quickly and understand how this new system is working, so that the bank can basically be more agile with their technology. So if they want to change something or if they want to add things, a lot of the benefit of modernization is once you get the data off of the legacy system, you can now, because it's on a modern like cloud framework, you can now use it for like AI training. You can use, now there's regulations around that, but it opens up a whole field of opportunities for these companies that they wouldn't have access to if it was still sitting in the mainframe. Yeah.
So there's some stuff that's actually deployed.
Yes.
There's stuff that's actually out there.
Yep.
And one thing I like to ask is, being 18 months in, once again, we've had the start, we've had the pivot, you are where you are now. And sometimes I'll ask, where do you see yourself in 2 years, and where do you see yourself in 5 at this point?
Yes.
What is that? What does Kathayst 2 years from now look like?
Yes. So the 5 years is easier to answer. I'm going to start there. 5 years from now, I imagine Kathayst being an end-to-end solution that's implemented in at least one of the top 10 banks in the country. That is my goal. Okay, like I that to go there, and it's not going to be for like a whole mainframe system, but like starting to implement that for a big bank. In 2 years, it's going to be about getting that entire end-to-end product completed and tested out, and actually like having completed a full mainframe migration. Because these migrations, it's not 2 weeks thing. It's even with AI product automating most of it, you still have some elements of like humans need to be there to check and verify and participate in the process, so that it still takes a couple of months to finish a modernization. So I'm hoping to have at least one positive, relatively medium scale mainframe migrated off in the next 2 years, but that might be ambitious. I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like it's that ambitious. It sounds like you got your time frames.
Yeah.
And another thing I like to ask is like, the challenges. What's the biggest challenge that you have faced up to this point that you're facing right now? Because maybe there's someone out there that can help you out with that. But what's the biggest challenge that you have faced up to this point?
Yeah. So there are a whole lot of challenges. One of the biggest ones is, up till now, how companies deal with this problem is they go to consulting firms. Like they'll get, if the big companies, they'll go to like an Accenture, a TCS, a Capgemini, Infosys, McKinsey. All of them, like, to get the talent and everybody, like, these are like multi-million-dollar, almost billion-dollar contracts to do these modernizations. So that market is like really hard to penetrate and convince these big companies to like move off of these consulting firms. The challenge we're facing is like finding some of those smaller tier companies that still have the mainframe, still want to move, but can't afford these, huge prices that come with working with consulting firms. And there's like a huge overhead that comes with that. There's a huge amount of risk and everything involved. So it's a little bit like a go-to-market is we're still working on that. Right now, a lot of what we do is we work with mid-tier consulting firms who then have like end projects with their clients, and we help those consulting firms do the projects faster with less resources, so increasing the profit margins and things like that.
So it sounds like the biggest problem is sales.
Yes. Ultimately, yes. Yes.
You need to find that rainmaker to bring in the bacon.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So well, there you go. If you know somebody.
Yep.
So I always like to play this game. because everyone's looking for cash. I mean, who
Yeah.
isn't raising?
Yeah,
If you're a
that's
startup with
true.
2 years in, who's not raising money? If you are, what I like to do is like the 2 minute drill,
Yeah.
which is you're sitting in front of a VC right now. You got 2 minutes to convince the money people to write a check. You
Right.
got 2.5 minutes to plead your case.
Yes.
Go.
All right. So, did you know that over 90% of all the business transactions that you do go through old mainframe systems that were developed in the 70s and 80s? The problem here is that currently those systems are maintained by people with the average age of 55 years old, and the number of people who can maintain these systems is going down by 10% every single year. If we get to a near zero point over there, your transactional systems is no longer going to be reliable. That's the market that we play in. We are helping these companies move off of these old systems and de-risk some of these problems that will come in the future, move to a modern technology where they can actually hire new people to maintain it, also leverage all the benefits of the modern tech that we have in today's age, including AI, to upgrade and be more agile with the technology. Currently, we're at a stage where we have about 2 to 3 pilots going. We're on the verge of converting to our first paid customer, and we are raising a pre-seed round of 500K. Are you interested?
Damn, that's tight. That's pretty good. That was right. That's pretty damn good. Just as we kind of come into the home stretch here,
Yes.
I always like to ask what can be done for you, and then what can be done for the folks out there, the community at large. So, in terms of what can the community do for you? Is there an ask? Are you, once again, money, easy, okay,
Yeah.
who isn't?
Yes.
Are you looking for help with your go to market? Are you looking to hire? Are you looking, do you have a particular problem that you're trying to solve that someone may be able to fix? And then in turn, what you can do for the community at large. Start with the ask, or start with the ask, and then you can give them the give.
Okay. All right. So my ask is twofold. So if you're a technical person who either has some prior experience with working with mainframes or doing modernization projects, and you're passionate about solving this problem, want to join our team, please reach out. That's one half of the ask. The other half, as I mentioned, sales is like a little bit of a challenge right now, where I'm trying to figure out, and I am looking, for people. If you have experience in this field, you have some suggestions. If you know internally how the big companies or mid-sized company deals with this problem, please reach out. If you know a local company that has mainframes, please reach out, because that has been one of the things that I've been looking and hunting within Boston area.
And looking to make that the bread and butter.
Yes.
So essentially, referrals and hiring.
Yes.
You're looking for tech. Is there anything, because you sounded like you were looking for some tech people?
Yeah.
Is there anything particular, web dev, anything particular to the talent?
Yeah.
Just to kind of narrow the field. You might have said it already, but why not?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So from the tech side, web dev is great to have, but one of the more critical things I'm looking for is people who've sort of worked with either compilers before, or who have worked with like abstract syntax trees, who've worked on a very like core language level, who understand how languages are built, like programming languages are built, not just how they are used. Because we are essentially trying to like convert from one language to the other, and you need to know how these languages are built. So it's a very core knowledge. If you happen to have it, please reach out. Even if you're not interested in a job, I'd love to have a conversation and pick your brain a little bit if you're up to it.
Nice. So that was the ask.
Yes.
Hit him with the give.
All right. So in terms of how I can help, there are again multiple ways I can help. If you are a immigrant founder on a student visa, and want to know how you can start a company, grow the company on a student visa while staying, illegally, while being a legal resident in the United States, please reach out. I can help you navigate the F1 OPT, STEM OPT, and even like going to an O1 and visa situation. I can share resources. I have being a immigrant founder myself, I have built those resources over the time, which I'm happy to share and make introductions for you. I've also locally in Boston, I've participated in a few accelerators. C10 being one of the most prominent ones. If you're interested in an introduction there, want to join, if you're AI first company and looking to join C10 Labs, I'm happy to give you like feedback, make an introduction, put you in front of the right people. Other than that, if anyone's like, if you're interested in meeting anybody in my network, if somebody in my network can help you out in any way, please reach out. Like if they're a close enough person to me and I can guarantee that they will talk to you, I will definitely make an introduction.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, as we're coming up on the half-hour mark, I want to thank you, Anushka. Thank you very much of Kathalyst. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. If anyone out here wants to get a hold of Anushka, this will be on YouTube. You'll see this on LinkedIn. You'll see this wherever I can post it. If I can, put a movie on a wall, I'll put it there too. Yeah. But we will definitely be looking to see you come back through at some point and let us know how things are going. Aside from that, I want to say thanks everybody for watching this, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.